So a lot of time, young people, when I'm always interacting, there's always our gear and our desire. Why doesn't change happen swiftly? Why don't we see if everybody knows that this is the solution to the problems, why don't we see implementation? Why don't we see action happening? And oftentimes, part of the reason for that is that many of those things are not as simple as we want to see them, as we want to believe. Just from the presentation from Haga, we see even the CFTA itself with we have the African Union, we have the COMESA, we have the IGAD for example, for East Africa, where Ethiopia also is. So how do we interact? Which law comes first? We have our national constitutions. We have all these instruments that we have to deal with. And the key is we have to navigate through all of them. And then there are the human rights protocols that we have signed. There are international charters and treaties that we have signed. World Trade Organization treaties that we sign. And all these things, they kind of come in a full circle. And then we ask ourselves now, how do we engage and how do we navigate? And it's the same thing for young people as well. When we talk about the 4 E's plus H, it's not one after the other. It's a holistic. They come mainly from what we call the demographic dividend for young people. When we say a young person can only be prosperous, one, if you are educated. But for you to be educated, you also have to be nurtured, and you have to have healthy food. You need to have access to health. If you're not healthy, then what's the point of being educated, right? If you're educated, if you're healthy, there's no employment, how can you contribute? So this is not a sequential thing, it's a holistic thing. So you apply the 4 E's plus H into the life of a young person almost all at the same time. And we're going to look at them maybe one by one to make it easier in all our interventions. How do we dissect and how do we apply the use and gender lens to each issue that we resolve?
Aga, thank you very much for explaining all of those protocols. One point that I wanted to add on Aga speech is that the free movement, the AU protocol of free movement, the right to residence and the right to establishment, that is the whole name, is a very great tool that we can actually leverage on to fight extreme poverty on the continent. AFTFCA also as well. And there is also a third one, which is the SATAM, the Single African Air Transport Market, which is based on Yamoussoukro Declaration. You may hear about that. That is actually one of the great tools. If it is well implemented, that should actually lower the price of the tariff of traveling across the continent when it comes to the flight ticket. You may know that it is cheaper for us to travel to Europe instead of even going into African countries. I don't know if you have experienced that. It will take me up to sometimes $1,000 to go to the West Africa. Well, I can actually pay for $500 or $600 to go to the Europe. That is challenging for the continent. So the AFTFCA, as one campaign, we have seen the AFTFCA, the SATAM, and the AU Protocol of Free Movement of Persons. The right to residency and right to establishment are three protocols and tools that we can leverage or to create the 15 million jobs yearly that we want for African by 2025. That is what we are on business on now. We want to create the 15 million jobs every year until 2025 in Africa. It is possible. How can we do that? The AFTFTA is a tool. The AFTFTA that is not only trading between the countries, but there is the development of the industrial parks and the special economic zones that are happening in the continent. In Gabon, for instance, in Benin, my own country, in different other countries. And what we are advocating for when it comes to AFTFTA is to actually put an emphasis on the value chain and the supply chain. The supply chain, that means that if you have a special economic zone in Benin, how can it benefit Togo, Ghana, Nigeria, for instance? Not competing special economic zones. That is something that African leaders have to think of. And the second thing is the SATAM The SATAM, of course, there are some of the pilot countries that are working on it recently in 2022, late 2022. They have agreed that they will lift some of the restrictions when it comes to traveling. You know, Ethiopian Airlines now is traveling more in Africa, and that is the African, the first carrier. But the other countries also are working on having their own national carrier. How can we benefit from each other instead of competing? That is a very interesting question. And lastly, one thing that I want to share is that the AU free movement of persons, the right to residence and right to establishment, as she said, we only have 4 countries that have ratified. It is a shame. Rwanda, Mali, Niger, and Sao Tome and Principe, only 4 since 2018. That is, this month is going to, no, last month it has been 5 years now that the protocol is in place, but only 4 countries has ratified. And we need 11 more countries. How can we do, what can we do to actually help the 11 countries to understand that the protocol itself is an opportunity for them? You know, most of the time when countries, they come to the AU, they represent the country, the state, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, they represent the country, they vote laws. When it comes to the implementation, it is a challenge. Almost all the protocols or whatever AU has ratified, it is a challenge. So now what we are doing at One Campaign, it is explaining to the countries that we have an opportunity, which is AFTFCA. At AFTFCA level, we have what we call the AFTFCA Guided Initiative. That's 8 countries are already pilot countries that are already working on. Kenya has traded with Ghana recently. So out of the 8 countries, what are the countries that we can actually discuss with to see? You have already ratified the AFTFCA. You haven't ratified the AU Protocol of Free Movement. You're now part of the AFTFCA Guided Initiative. What it takes to you to ratify the AU protocol so that we can move forward, so that we can reach the 15. That one is the work that we are doing at One Campaign. So the other opportunity is you have a country like Benin, which is the most open country in Africa, my country, the most open country in Africa. When I say so, I'm not challenging Ethiopia to be, but I'm just saying that Benin is the only country in Africa where you can, as an African, you don't need any visa. When you just take your flight, you just go there. You can stay there for 3 months without anybody asking you anything. 3 months. You can't have that in any other African countries. Of course, Gambia is trying to do the same. Ghana has reached one month, Nigeria 1 month, Seychelles 1 month, Mauritius. But if we take a country like Benin, who has not ratified the protocol, but which is already implementing it, it is easy for those countries, for instance, to just move forward and ratify. So the assurance that we are actually giving the countries that the protocol comes in 3 different phases. The first phase is the visa openness. 3 months visa free for all African countries, for all African. That is what we are working on. That is the first phase of the protocol. The second phase is the right to residence. And the third phase is the right to establishment of business. So if you ratify, it's not that all the phases are coming together that you have to implement, but you have to go step by step. And after everyone, when the AU Executive Council, that is the Minister of Foreign Affairs, they come together, they have to actually note that at phase 1, the countries that have moved forward, we have reached the 15, the ratification is in place, and then they have to decide whether they want to go to phase 2 in the countries or not. So it is a long process, but we have to start somewhere.
I just want to start with asking a simple question. What is, maybe to a person, what is like disability means to you? What does disability, how do you understand disability?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Disability means it's a barrier. It doesn't have to do anything with the person. It just has to do with the barrier of the opportunity and the psychological issues that we inflict on them because our community isn't so friendly to them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Inability is all about being unable to see behind the curtain or limiting your vision, your dream, where you want to be in the future. That's about, it's not physical or something like that, rather it's about limiting your sight, your future, your dream. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I got 2 perspectives of what disability means. It's not the impairment, but it's a barrier. However, if the African Free Continental Trade Area Agreement is going to solve that by eliminating the barriers for also the person with disability, because it's not the impairment that is limiting them from achieving what we're discussing today, being entrepreneurs, having their own business, moving freely from place to place, but the barrier. We can talk about employability, we can talk about engagement, we can talk about education one by one. And our person with disability included in all of this. So we are talking about this, and also for young person. Are we engaged in policy making, decision making, right? Are we in the platform where we can make our voice heard, our ideas heard? And are we in a platform where a young person can engage and go there and have like, this is one of my experience, in most of the office I went, I'm like, they see me and they directly say, oh, you're so young. And that's most of the time when they stop hearing me. And we need to change that, because young people have power, young people have potential. Young people are the potential of Africa itself. And also, seeing it from the human rights lens, we have the adequate living standard, right? We have the right to food, we have the right to work, and we have the right to social security. And this all is encompassed in the African Free Continental Trade Agreement. And further and more, we have the vulnerable groups for the women, for the young people, for the small-scale farmers, for persons with disability. And even it could create an opportunity to enhance and promote human rights by engaging young people in this kind of platform. Thank you very much.
My name is Kirobel Bogala. I am a doctor, a medical doctor, and I am now currently pursuing my master's degree on public health, and I am a Pan-Africanist.
Okay, so we have met here in this event that is organized by the Model African Union. So before I proceed to the questions that I have for you, let me give you the chance and for you to explain what Model African Union is for our audience.
All right, so Model African Union is a platform where we engage the youth and productive society into problems that are now Africa is currently facing huge problems, and the youth are the ones responsible for all tackling or solving all of the problems. And AMAU is basically a platform or a structure where we could vitalize the potentials of the productive society and the youth, and I believe is making good remarks.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and hope it would also be a very telling story to be told to authorities that might perhaps use the potential ideas of the youth. So Model African Union is by far one of the greatest civil societies that are working on empowering the coming generation and vitalizing the ideas of the youth.
Now, as an Africans, more than half of our population is the young people, and maybe the people under the age of 25. So what can we tell out of it? What is the benefit of having a young generation? And you and me being as a young generation, part of the African population, what is the benefit of having a young generation, and how much do you believe on the coming generation too?
Okay, so as you said, Africa is the youngest continent in the world, with over half of the population being under the age of 35, which tells a story that Africa is one of the most productive societies, productive continents in the world. So with the question related to how do you believe how do the youth involve in
daily engagements?
Engagements in Africa. Well, with the growing society, growing problems also comes along with growing society.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
As much as there is a problem that is evolving its nature or mutating to a greater elevation, the young productive generation should also be vigilant enough to actually tackle these problems or address in some manner. It could be professionally, it could be educationally, it could be socially. It's all a matter of structure, it's all a matter of organizing. And with organizing a productive society like African continent, I believe the momentum we would be creating would be of a great magnitude and probably even much greater magnitude than the Western world. And those which are proclaimed to be most prosperous. But I believe prosperity comes with people, and people coming together with an elevated energy or sense of communality, or I believe that's how we could address problems that are currently happening and upcoming African problems. So yeah, I think the youth have great involvement in this, and probably the most predominant involvement in tackling African problems. Perhaps African leaders could also learn from certain African youth that I believe some of my friends here are generating ideas that are impeccable, that are ideas that are
magnificent.
Yeah, magnificent. It was,
yes.
Yeah, and those I believe I learned a lot from my colleagues, and I believe there is more for the authorities to learn from these people. So yeah.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Octavio Diogo. I am from Benin Republic. I have been living in Addis for the past 10 years now. My job is basically a policy and advocacy consultant around everything concerning the AU at One Campaign. That means I'm working for an NGO called One Campaign, and my role is basically liaison between the One Campaign and the AU on everything concerning the AU. Thank you very much.
Nice. So we've been having this conversation, we've been having this the event, which is organized by the Model African Union. So in the event that we've been attending, we have talked about the African policies, and basically it was about the free trade and how we should accelerate it. And you guys, as a One Campaign working under the African Union, for the policies of African Union, you have mentioned about producing or creating 50 million jobs every year for up to 2025. So I wanted to ask, 50 million is a lot, and you have said that it's not only creating a job but also a decent job, right? So I want you to say, what does it mean by the word decent job, and what kind of actions are being taken to actually put that on ground?
Thank you. Every year, more than 20 million young people go into the job market, more than. And the challenge now for them is how do they fit in the job market, or how the job market can absorb them. So One Campaign has taken on his own shoulder to actually help create the 15 million jobs in Africa every year for the until 2025. That means that there are many layers on which we are actually working on. The first is at the policy level. At the policy level, we have noticed that in Africa, for the jobs to be created, we need more young businesses to be created. What we have been doing on that, we have been calling the AU leaders to have consolidated policies and national laws in their own countries so that they can ease doing business in their own countries. That means that young people who want to become an entrepreneur so that he can create more jobs has to do it easily. Whether it is the license getting in just one day, it is possible. Whether it is the bank financing, it is possible. Whether it is all the incentive that the government can actually provide to every young people. So that is on the policy level. That is on the policy level and at the political level. At the mobilization level, we are actually informing young people. What we have done before we reach to that is that we have done a survey across the continent where we ask young people what is the first priority for them, and they said jobs. And then we went to 5 different countries: Senegal, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and Tunisia, and we held a national what they call gathering of young people to ask them how they think it can be done. They said through agriculture and easing doing business. So, and when it comes to the mobilization of young people, we have been mobilizing them through social media on our platform. We have been asking them to sign the petitions so that they can actually give more power to what we think we can do. We have been associating also when it comes to the pop culture. We have been associating ourselves with different artists, singers. In Ethiopia, for instance, there is Betty J. Betty J is one of our Betty G, which is one of our ambassadors who is also working on that with us. And finally, when it comes to the AFTFCA, the opportunity that we see through the AFTFCA, we think that the jobs that has to be created in every single country through the AFTFCA should not be just jobs, just something for young people to have a meaning, but it has to be a job that respects human being, that guarantees human security, that guarantees human economic security. That means that the jobs has to be sustainable. We don't need a job that just ends in 1 month or 2 months. It's not sustainable. So we need job that goes beyond 1 year, for instance. We need jobs that can put someone in a mental health that they can perform and its duty, but also he can actually get some saving for his family and beyond. So those are the kind of jobs that we need. We need jobs in the green, in the agriculture area, in the solar system, for instance. We need jobs to be created, the green jobs, not only decent, but green jobs. Yes. So it is feasible in Africa. It is feasible. We have to remove them. Finally, we have to remove the barriers to create jobs in every country. We have to build capacity of the young people when it comes to education, the skills development, the suitable technical vocational educational training. And for that, for instance, AU has a very good strategy. And then we have also to let young people know that it is possible. It is possible. It is feasible. Government has the means to do that. Finally, the last leg that we are working on is we are advocating for the multinational banks that when they are giving some loans or they are providing funding to the countries, they have to put a system or a framework in place where we can monitor how many jobs have been created through that funding. It's not providing just money to any country, but to ensure that the money that is given or that is provided should actually help the countries to invest in the sectors that create massive, massive change and massive jobs. For instance, agriculture. Agriculture, yes. There is a Malabo Declaration 2014 where African countries have committed to put 10% of their budget in agriculture, to develop agricultural sector. And one campaign at that time, we said, agriculture is sexy. Agriculture is open. We have to bring young people in that system. But we need more investment. Only one person cannot do agriculture. They have to be investor. You have to actually come together so young people can build the capacity for that. We are working on all of those layers at the same time to make sure that the 15 million jobs are created yearly in Africa. In different ways, exactly.
I love the fact that you guys are actually giving enough attention for the agriculture, because we as an Africans, we have the perfect land, we have the perfect geography, we have enough labor for it, we have the educated people at the same time. So it's a very critical thing that we take agriculture as a very basic means for our development. And at the same time, I would really love to appreciate you guys to start with taking surveys and really understanding, really asking the people, what do they want? What is it that the young generation, the people out of job seeking for? You know, asking what they want is really much easier to solve the problem.
That's true.
That's pretty nice, and I would really love to appreciate that. So my second question for you will be, sir, about we have talked, you have mentioned a bit about the free trade of Africa, the free trade, which is a very powerful concept. So I want you to tell me what you think that the benefit of the free trade is besides the economy, and how it can help Africa to become, you know, developed.
As I said, the free trade, the AFTFCA is not only traditional trade
yes.
of goods. there is also that what we call the free movement of persons. For the good to move from a country to other country, we need the free movement of the one that is taking the good from a country to another one. And then we also have the SATAM, the single African air transport market, which is actually a policy that should allow the air transport to be liberalized, the air transport to be beneficial and aid more profit. But what is interesting is, apart from the economic gain that we will get out of the AFTFCA, there are a lot of other gains. For instance, through the AFTFCA or the free movement of person, there should be cultural program between countries for us in Benin to get to know more of Ethiopia or Ethiopia, even with the neighboring countries. There are some people in Kenya, for instance, who don't know exactly what is the culture in Ethiopia, and the fact that they do not know, it builds what they call the stereotype. And when you have the stereotype, it is easy to fight someone based on the stereotype. So until you get to the cultural program, cultural understanding, you cannot actually socialize easily. So you have to be open-minded. So the benefit of AFTFCA is actually to bring people together. We need an Africa of people. We don't no longer need an Africa of institutions or politicians. We need Africa of people. And that is what is the AFTFCA, the free movement of person, and the SATAM is bringing together. More cultural understanding. The other side is the benefit is personal capacity building. You know, when you know that you're going to be competitive, you will upgrade yourself. You will upgrade yourself. Every time that the need is seen, you have to upgrade yourself. So that there is that opportunity for every single young person on the continent to actually embrace new avenues of learning, of self-learning. Not only learning, but self-learning. So the personal education about some things, getting to know other countries, for instance, but even when it comes to their own skills development. The person may be encouraged, for instance, to learn more about artificial intelligence, for instance. That can actually benefit economically the AFTFCA, but that is a personal gain at his own level. And this CFTA also brings together people to co-create development. Co-create development. Yes. For instance, if you leave a country with a certain standard of living and you cross the border, you go to another country, you will try to raise what the level of the standard of living in that country. And that means that the population in that country, the host country, may actually look up on you and try to raise also their own standard of living.
They are encouraged, right?
Encouraged. Yes. You understand? So there is that benefit of raising the standard of living by co-creating the development. This is a massive the massive advantage of AFTFCA. Those are those 2 or 3 that I can think of for now.
So everyone, I hope you guys have enjoyed it. This is what we had for you guys in this episode. Do not forget to share us your ideas and comments below this video, and also on what topics that we should talk about on our next episode. For me, it's time for me to say goodbye.